Hi. I want to talk to you for a couple minutes about effectively using your narrator. So I'm assuming that you're writing fiction for the moment, but a lot of what I'm going to be saying is applicable to memoir as well. So maybe hang in there. But let's assume, again, we're using the narrator. So let's assume that you have a viewpoint character. If you're writing a short story, probably you're only going to be telling the story from one character's point of view. Sometimes two, but in the vast majority of cases, short stories are told from the main character's point of view, just one character. And in a novel, you can tell from more than one, not a bazillion, probably a couple, and maybe just one. But let's assume, just for the purposes of this short discussion, that you've chosen one character and you're telling the story from that one character's point of view, just for the sake of this discussion. Okay. That's the main character. The story is being told from the point of view of that character. Now your narrator. So let's also assume that it's not being told in the first person. If it's being told in the first person, the narrator is the character, which has its own problems. We'll talk about that some other time. It's really it's so hard to do. I've never been able to do that, but because the narrator then doesn't know so much, only knows herself, doesn't know necessarily what other people are thinking about her or any of that. Okay, so it's not first person. So third person, she or he. Okay, so there's the setup. Stories being told from one point of view, not first person, and then you've got this narrator. And I can remember years and years ago wondering, who is the narrator? Is this a person? It's such an abstract concept. Who is telling the story? Well, it's not in old-timey stories, that there'd be a frame around the story where somebody was sitting around the campfire and they were telling the story, and it was an actual person telling the story, or in the rocking chair, let me tell you the story, granddaughter. I don't think anybody does that anymore. But no, it's not a real person. So it can be like, who is it telling the story? It's just the narrator. It's not an actual person. It's just this entity telling the story. But what matters is what I want to talk about today, now that I'm finally getting to it, is how close to the character the narrator is standing. This is something people overlook, new writers overlook a lot. It's like, so is the narrator's not just telling the story, not just going, this happened. The narrator has so many other functions. So use the narrator. So is the narrator standing right behind this character, like standing in her shoes and looking through her eyes? That's like the closest you can get to first person narration, but it's not. There's still other things this narrator can clue you in on. But is it right there, totally immediate, standing right behind the character? Or is the narrator standing a little bit further back and notice has more peripheral vision, as it were, okay? Or really far back and perhaps is judging the character, making pronouncements about silliness of choices or what they should be doing. So those are kind of the extremes, right on top of them and miles apart. And most often, that doesn't mean you have to do it. It's kind of somewhere in between there. And when you use your narrator, again, your narrator isn't just saying this happened. Your narrator talks about how the character is feeling and talks about, and can describe physically, if you do that, can physically describe, or gestures, or person in first person can't really do that, describe their face, or a gesture they may not be aware of if their shoulder dropped. And the narrator can do that. And the narrator can tell the reader things that the character doesn't know. For example, the character, had forgotten that da-da-da-da when he made this decision. Or he wouldn't remember for years that da-da-da-da-da. Or he wouldn't see the effect of this decision for several weeks. Or, like that. The narrator knows things that the character either doesn't know at all, or has forgotten or won't discover until later. So doesn't know, forgot in the past, doesn't know till the future. So use your narrator to do those things. You don't need a flash forward in the sense of, again, you can, especially like in fantasy and more science fiction-y things. You can flash into the future of the story, but the narrator can do that really just in like a half a sentence or a sentence, just quietly say. It would be months before she realized. It would be, okay? So start noticing that. It's very subtle in good writers. When you're reading the masters, they do this and you may not even notice it. You're just getting information that you weren't even aware of how you got it. And that's why we read and study the people who do this well. And the people who don't do it well, published people. I've learned a lot from reading writers who are just like kind of okay, because you can see what they're doing. The masters, it's seamless and you may miss it. But just kind of good, okay writers, you can see what they were doing and it works, but it's not seamless. So you can sometimes learn more from those folks. So read widely and see how writers are using the narrator. And in memoir, I said this would apply. It's first person, but you can still flash forward and flash backward without flashbacks. You can say, in 6 months, I'd realized that, or when I was doing, I'd forgotten that. So you can do that in memoir, because memoir is interpretation. It's not just what happened. It's interpreting what happened. And fiction is the same thing. It's not just, it's totally different, but it's the same in that there's interpretation. And so how much interpretation is the narrator offering in terms of telling the story, or just in terms of how it's set up, how the character is acting, is behaving, is responding to other people, is conversations from other characters, between other characters about your main character can inform what's going on. So, okay, I'm going too far afield now, but it's all narration. The narrator's doing all of it, right? But just to start noticing how good writers use their narrators to give you, the reader, information about the character, about what they know, they don't know, what they will discover later, what they've forgotten. Just look at that for now and play around with it. It's so fun when you discover this tool. It really is fun. So, hope I didn't get too far afield. That's my bit of information, my bit of insight for today. My name is Pam Sorellis, and I am Winged Horse Writing Studio. And I help writers find and shape their stories, fiction and nonfiction, creative stories, and strengthen their voices and create powerful, beautiful, compelling work. So if you'd like to learn more about me, you can go to wingedhorsewritingstudio.com and see what I'm up to. You can always comment below if you have any questions or comments. I'd love to hear from you. And I will see you again soon. Happy writing.